Jump Hangover Round 2. This was going to be an extra. We like to do that for the good people who, go to patreon.com/weeaboohell and whatnot, who have a really close religion-like parasocial attachment to our success. Or at least I like to imagine. There's a very small number of you. Not the point. The point is, this was going to be an exclusive, but we kinda had to slow our roll this holiday season because I am looking for a new apartment, and in New York, that means I have been driven to temporary insanity. Anyway, we're recording the main episode tomorrow. I think it's going to be a good time. We're actually going to talk about Arcane, which is, I guess, technically weeaboo adjacent, though we've had the whole conversation on the show about, just the line of ideas and styles and aesthetic that make up the whole anime sphere and why this kind of thing is something we would loop into it. But that's a whole other story. Jump Hangover, just a little loose talk by myself about what I've been reading, writing, playing, often just thinking because Lord knows I sort of run whatever direction the railroad track in my head takes me. Anyway, first up, I have just read, I guess caught up with Bug Ego, which is it's a horror comedy by one. You might know him as the author of One Punch Man, a comic I have talked infinite amounts of shit on, or about, I should say. And it's kind of funny because, then he did Mob Psycho 100, and I actually ended up really enjoying that. And since he was a young breakout, I used to make the comment that One Punch Man was the equivalent of taking fucking Mark Twain's kindergarten crayon scribbles and throwing them out there because you detect something. Which is, a good way to lock someone down, but I think we could have done better than a lot of the core Saitama gags there. But yeah, Bug Ego, similarly, is a lot of fun. It's a different kind of fun. I mean, similar in that he's still very locked into this theme of there is, your maladjusted Ubermensch in a core role, but we follow more of this hapless secondary figure. So you'll recognize the structures, but I don't know, the horror comedy angle is fun. He has a voice I don't necessarily associate with the genre, so it makes it read a little differently. It's just a good slapstick time. It's not life-changing the way that, I don't know, I ramble about Prison School forever, but it's solid. You will not turn into bees and suffer if you read it. Though the main character of Bug Ego often does things like turn into bees and suffer. There's a very Daffy Duck by way of Junji Ito brand of comic suffering that follows one of the protagonists around. It is very amusing. He makes it matter when he needs it to. I want to give a solid example, but I'm not sure how far down the spoiler tree I want to go for. I don't know. Horror and comedy are kind of two of the worst genres to be fully spoiled on something, because, A, with comedy, you already now functionally know the joke, e.g. the entire emotional experience you're trying to derive from the thing. And I guess horror, it's similar, like you're told, I don't know, what a jump scare horror spot will be, just kind of defanging it ahead of time. And if you go into this, I think you should try to go in fresh. So everything one touches turns to gold, so maybe, I mean literal economic gold, not necessarily critical gold, as my compliment sandwich so far reveals. So I recommend take a crack at it. Maybe you'll like the flavor. So next, I finally stopped procrastinating, and I talked a bit about being into this comic before, but I caught up with Showa Shoten, which I am sure I am mispronouncing like a child, but we'll live. I think that's just a side effect of being in this whole niche. If you're not familiar, this is I don't want to say dramedy because that's deeply associated with Netflix, his weakest efforts, like just pure shovel kind of weird TV. But it is a drama about comedians, or you could say it follows comedians with a hint of drama. And specifically, it's about two young manzai comedians, and we have been in this one tournament forever, and that kind of chafes in a way, but I think it's been done in a way where at least this maze of flashbacks feels like a few discrete stories, almost like a short story collection about a bunch of different man's eye comedians. I guess I'm saying I'm still on board with it. Or maybe I'm just less moody than usual, but I think that Showa Shoten is at least delivering in. It's good at turning these dramatic dials. I'm always kind of amused by my reaction to this comic because despite how much it's about comedy and how the sausage of comedy is made and it's crammed with jokes by these comedians, I never really find myself laughing so much at it, which sounds like damning with faint praise, but the drama stuff does work, the characterization stuff does work, and you know what? If you try to do two things and you land one of them, it's better than whiffing both. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So yeah, Showa Shoten is continuing to be fun, and they are currently going into the finale of this tournament, or I guess it's the semifinal round, charging in at the sort of speed of smell there. Next up on my reading docket, oh yeah, I finished off Oshinoko finally. Everyone was telling me to. I was a bit nervous when it seemed to be leaning in a bit into that whole odd siscon thing that I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but I really enjoy yucking people's yum, and if that is your yum, it is time to disconnect from the Pornhub knockoffs of the world, especially if you're in Florida. You don't need that legal trouble, do you? And I don't know, just try a more mainline brand of pornography for a bit, like just really get back to the fundamentals of two disaffected people in a hotel room in Vegas getting their check. Less roleplay, more action. But going back to Oshinoko, I thought it was a decent ending. It's not one of those, I don't know, Kaiser Soze tier things where it reinvents all the events that come through before it, but it just ends in a manner that is logical with what came before it. I don't want to say that I expected more to say. I think it's very in line with previous chapters, but I suppose that there's that thing with a serial format where because you're waiting for this discrete piece of it, your mind is almost primed for, oh man, this has to be the finale that wraps up this whole experience in a bow for me. And I don't know, I guess sometimes you don't get that. I guess it's not a pivot into stupidity, I will say that. Things just sort of shake out in a way that you might imagine if you were reading Oshinoko and you have read a second thing, or even things that are not manga, though that's not quite as popular a pastime amidst people that will actually listen to a podcast called Weeaboo Hell, but I don't think you will be disappointed if you've been on this chain. I did appreciate it took some time to wrap things up with its secondary cast in a way that I know a lot of comics that end more abruptly don't necessarily get the time or have the inclination to do. Which is cool. But yeah, we closed the whole thematic loop around I. So I guess I know. I'll give that one another like 3/4 thumbs up or something. Let's see. As I mentioned, I watched Arcane. I kind of blitzed through it. And because we're talking about tomorrow, I'm going to leave it there. Just imagine that I know, what's funnier to you? Is it funny to if I really love it or really hate it? Like, whichever path is open and gets you to tune in tomorrow, that was my reaction to Arcane. We'll see how I feel about the League of Legends and all that. I am still keeping up with Kagurabachi. You might remember that as the martial arts crime drama nuke allegory revenge story. It has a lot of interesting hyphens going for it. This chapter was a bit more towards the setup side. I think that it's definitely a fun, I don't know, little chase it's set up here. Kagurabachi is super consistent. It remains consistent. I honestly can't say a bad word about it just because I'm kind of micro-targeted to it in a lot of ways. That sense of Demon Slayer-esque heroism that infuses half the populace is still kicking around in Kagurabachi, and I appreciate that about it. It honestly lends its sort of edge a lot of rope that there is this is humanist the word? I feel like I beat the word humanist to death whenever I wanted to say the just vague positivity. But there is this positive slant on people and the way people are, on the most part, aside from four people who have to be fucking lunatics for you to have a comic book in Kagurabachi thus far, and I appreciate that. Let's see. I'm early, so I don't want to judge this one yet, but I finally caught up with Human Civilization and started to read Blame. That's I guess classic is now the term you would use for it because time marches relentlessly. I've been meaning to try out Blame since I was in high school, so that's a very weird sentence for me. I do like what I have read so far. It is in that sort of grimdark niche of sci-fi anime manga stuff that I honestly am kind of drawn to, like a lanternfly to a bug zapper. So I am enjoying being zapped so far. Honestly, very positive week. As I get older, I'm not subjecting myself to as many hate reads or hate watches. Though, there's a lot of money in those hills. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I could become one of those horrible, every frame a pause motherfuckers. Or I'll maintain my dignity going into this book launch. I'll pretend to be a human being for at least that much longer before I really just jump off the deep end and go full alt-right. I'm not going full alt-right. It's not me. I'm not one of the crowded zone anyway. Not as much money as there used to be. Let's see. One Piece remains One Piece. The giant arc stuff is still fun. There was an amusing, if hormoned up gag about it turns out they've been walking on a giant for a few pages, and I don't know, it's like that kind of gag. Sometimes I just feel maybe maybe I need to reconnect with my inner middle schooler on some level because I think my cutoff on that stuff is a little too arbitrarily short. But it's still fun on the whole. There's some interesting foreshadowing floating around this Loki figure from earlier who has his introductory shot. I mean, Oda's a great cartoonist on a lot of levels. That nice sense of dark fantasy scope. I mean, it's not a dark fantasy series, but just, aesthetic influences trickle in, by which I mean I think that Oda ran off and played Elden Ring, and you can kind of feel it in the genre of weight he tries to give that whole splash page introducing Loki. Fun time. Outside of the weeaboo sphere, because I think I should just prove to you that there is more to life and we do not always need to be hooked up to the anime EKG machine. I went to a live wrestling show because I am once again a 360-degree nerd, and I saw AEW's Christmas Collision, which was also two ROH shows. Full disclosure, I missed the second ROH taping because that thing that some wrestling shows do with filming multiple things, it's very clear one show is sort of the company's shadow realm. I have trouble investing myself into the shadow realm. Though there was a very entertaining shadow realm sort of promo exposition bit following. I don't know if or how many of you are familiar with Athena. She was NXT champion forever. She has now been a Ring of Honor champion forever. Those are just two wrestling companies if you go outside a lot. But she has this amusing kind of Reddit flavored gag of calling her set of goons and the audience minions, and it seems to be circling all the way back around the face again, so I don't know, good on them for having good fun with that. It's interesting because if you put the words down on a sheet of paper, I think I would be hyper annoyed with the whole thing, but there's something that is very broad and personal about wrestling, and there's what the performer herself brings to it that kind of carries it home to a fun place for me. So that storyline is still going. That was fun. In the main AEW show, I honestly had a bit of a spiritual experience because I've been a fan of Ricochet, King Ricochet, Pretty Ricky, whatever you want to call him, ever since I was watching Lucha Underground when I was yay high. Lucha Underground was a very special show. You see, Lucha Underground was a wrestling show on Robert Rodriguez's personal network, El Rey, back when that was a thing. And it was a show that decided that I guess most wrestling was just too boring and more of the magic needed to be literal, and most of the plot needed to be conveyed in Yakuza-esque cutscenes, and it just worked. It just flat out worked. It had this wonderful foundation of these lucha libre wrestlers, sort of half imported from AAA, and he's been around the world since then. Ricochet languished for a while in World Wrestling Entertainment. Well, I guess in my opinion, everyone in World Wrestling Entertainment languishes, but that's a whole other bag of worms. As various, I don't know, documentaries, lawsuits, etc. will tell you. But yeah, now he's doing the AEW thing. In that match, I guess it's aired by now, so it's not so much a spoiler, but he seems to be sprinting heel of a sort of Weasley sort, and he's honestly, I think it'll be a cool fit for him. It's something I haven't really seen him try before. I guess I wasn't as plugged in during his New Japan Pro Wrestling King Ricochet days. As you can see, I can probably babble about wrestling forever, but I probably shouldn't. I don't know, I should play towards the title of the program a little bit. But yeah, that match between him and Will Ospreay, who I've also loved for a long time, was really cool. If you want to find out what it's like to just watch a man fly, check that match out. Check any of their previous matches out. It was a good time. As part of this whole tournament construct they've been doing, and wrestling tournament arcs are as storied and dense and occasionally misplaced as their sister genre, so it's kind of interesting. All right, so I promised last time, I believe, to talk about finishing up Nine Souls, which I did at the cost of spiritual energy, and I do want to say that balance is important in your existence, and I honestly have been so glued to word processors and newsletters and audio editing workstations and video workstations and this whole archiving side thing I've been doing that I really have not been giving some genres of real leisure that is not being converted in some sideways way to a project. And there was something very soulful for me to just returning to one of these almost arbitrarily hard games. And Nine Souls is definitely well within the tradition where it's a beautiful game that the majority of people would just turn off 2 hours in, saying, I am a human being, you cannot expect me to complete this. But if you do stick with it, there is, once again, a real sense of beauty to the art direction. It has this whole overarching Tao accept death kind of theme that I'm still kind of swishing around in my mouth in terms of what I think about it intellectually, but the delivery of it is great, and that's honestly more than you get from most games. Most games, again, do not even have a philosophy for you to agree or disagree with, so points to Nine Souls for even having enough thoughts where I go, I don't know. It's a difference between a Twisted Sister show and a philosophy lecture, if you will. So then there's this final boss, Agong, who I can only describe as the furry orphan of Kos in terms of bosses that have sent me to the madness dimension, almost to the rage dimension. But the thing is, while the rage dimension is the key to beating the orphan of Kos, that's one of the optional final bosses of Bloodborne. DLC final boss, I guess. Agong. Freaking Agong. To go through the game's whole parry tree insanity, you almost need to find enlightenment to beat Agong. I think I have been through the equivalent of a year of just yoga training, learning to do the L1 dance. Like, beneath every great action game, I think Dance Dance Revolution is hiding in there somewhere and just keeping rhythm. And the Agong thing becomes a pure rhythm game exercise until you can almost just hear your own stupid heart. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. It is complete insanity that they expect human beings to beat that. I don't know what happens when video games are huge these days. A game that's just big and popular will get some crossover traffic to all sorts of corner of culture and humanity. And I just kind of wonder what it's like when someone's just their dad or their little sister picks this up and is like, oh, hey, here's a cute cat. Maybe I'll have fun with this game. And then their thumbs are basically snapping against the controller as they try to contend with this. Or, I don't know, maybe it's going to be like that basketball thing where everyone's just better at it now than they used to be. That would be kind of cool to track. I mean, I guess you see it in speed running. These records are constantly being beaten with or without various cheats, aids, glitches, whatever. And I don't know, maybe as a species, we're just a more dialed in type of gamer now. Despite the eternal grognard complaints that everything's getting too easy these days. And back in my day, to beat a game, you had to walk up a 5 miles in snow, and the snow was covered in broken glass, and the broken glass was made of your dreams. I don't know. I'm a recursive cantankerous type. I'm a cantankerous type like cantankerous types. And on a final media notice, and sort of related to the Metroidvania thing that Nine Souls is up to, I completed, not completed, I am about halfway through Blasphemous 2, which is also wildly difficult, but much more horrifying. It's essentially filters all of the horrors of the wider Catholic mythos through a kind of, I don't want to just say Dark Souls because it's one of its premium influences, but visually it has a lot going on of its own that I enjoy. But yeah, it constantly is battering you with this insane imagery, ideas, etc., of this proto-Catholic world where this warped cosmic horror thing called the miracle is turning people into these guilt-ridden, guilt-driven nightmares. And man, it would be crazy if that was a real religion, right? Ah, I love the Earth. Anyway, this I don't know, little catch up is A, me telling you I'm not dead. B, we're recording the Arcane thing tomorrow. C, some stuff that I have enjoyed. I guess it's all just stuff I enjoyed this round. Yeah, just some stuff I enjoyed this round. I think we're about 1 or 2 chapters away from knowing how the whole drama queen drama is going to sort out, which is fun. Catch you all later. Peace. This is Jump Hangover, a suburb of Weeaboo Hell, which is Weeaboo Hell. Fuck cops.